Welcome to The World Today. I'm Vikas Majid Khan. Today we're talking about the OIC meeting that has been called by the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and a Pakistani delegation has also gone there to attend this conference. Of course, the subject is the decision by President Trump to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, much to the chagrin of the Muslim Ummah and the entire Muslim world. This is a problematic decision by the American president because it will lead to further chaos and bloodshed within the Middle East. And the situation in the Middle East, as we all know, is far from satisfactory. So we'll be talking in detail about the reasons why this decision was taken at this crucial juncture. So let's get the conversation started. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today, we've got Ambassador Saeed Khalid Saab, and along with him we have Qamar Cheema Saab, both regular guests on our show. So thank you very much for being here. Sir, let's begin with the timing of the announcement when Mr. Trump announced his recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and then also the decision to move his embassy over there. How much of it do you think had to do with his own domestic political problems, and especially Mr. Netanyahu's problems as well at home, because they were both facing investigations. Mr. Trump had the Russian investigation going on, which was like a sword of Damocles hanging on his head, and Mr. Netanyahu had corruption cases that he was facing. So in your opinion, sir, how much of it is basically to shift the attention from their own domestic problems?
That could very well be, one of the main reasons for Donald Trump announcing something quite extraordinary. His difficulties, on the domestic front, allegations against him, his sliding popularity, and so many other things. So it's quite possible that now, 2 months short of his first year in the White House, he has made this dramatic gesture, which nobody else before him did. And although he in a way took credit that the others before him promised but did not deliver, and he is delivering, he should be asking himself that there must be some very solid reason for his predecessors not to cross this particular line. And by crossing that line, he has created, I think, enormous problems for the coming weeks and months. I think the world at large, the European countries, the developing countries, the Islamic countries, they are all almost unanimous in opposing this announcement. And the best one can hope is that they will soft pedal it. The US government will not pursue it bullishly. They will not pursue the idea of building an embassy, on a fast track. That way, maybe the international opinion, the Muslim countries' opinion, maybe it will have some effect, although he has shown that he has little regard for these things.
Well, if you look at the American position on Israel and Jerusalem, it's never been really tilted towards the Palestinians or the Muslims. They've always stood by the fact that they support Israel as their ally. So it was only a matter of time before they came to this decision of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital, especially West Jerusalem. Similarly, we haven't had that sort of a reaction from the rest of the Christian world that supports Israel as such. The European Union have categorically distanced themselves from this decision and have said that it is a wrong decision. And since the OIC Summit is being held in Turkey, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan had a few criticisms about the Muslim world at large themselves, that what have they really done to support the Palestinian cause in the past 70 years. So, Cheema Saab, since you're a student of history, can you also give us a little background of what the real issue is over here? That why is it that Jerusalem is such a bone of contention for the Israelis and the Palestinians?
Well, I think what I have been reading and learning all about this Palestinian Arab-Israel conflict and what's happening is that I think the entire Arab world somehow has distanced itself from this Palestinian conflict. Virtually they have distanced themselves. They're not talking on Palestine for long. It is always taken as just to, this crisis is taken as a plea For example, I remember 2-3 years ago when the Saudis left the non-permanent seat of the Security Council because the international community was having a nuclear deal with Iran. And the only reason they gave that we are leaving Security Council because they said that since the Security Council is not doing enough on Palestine conflict, so we don't believe that being non-permanent member of this council will give benefit to us and to the Palestinian conflict, so we are leaving this. But on the other hand, they were not happy what was happening between the international community and the Iran. So they just use it as a leverage. And what is happening over the period of time where everyone, not just, I think those 57 toothless gums sitting in front of each other, I think they are just making statements and doing something. And I think I would appreciate the Turkish president that he's taking a lead and he's trying to showing his muscles even within Muslim world to the issues which are, be it the Rohingya crisis or be it this crisis. So the Muslim world has actually distanced itself from the Palestinian conflicts. Why? Because the positions have been compromised. For example, the major Arab leaders' position has been compromised because they're so much into their own issues and problems and legitimacy at home that they just cannot be effective in resolving this Arab-Israel conflict. And historically, there have been certain ideologically motivated people within Arab world, and more they supported the Palestinian cause, the more they lost the land. So as far as looking at the position, now they have backtracked from it, and the countries like Saudi Arabia, they're trying to come up with a different solution to the Palestinian conflict. And if they believe that, give East Jerusalem to Israel and let's find some other resolution. So when the Jared Kushner president's son-in-law, American president's son-in-law, was in Saudi Arabia before before shifting this American embassy from Tel Aviv to East Jerusalem, and he was there in Saudi Arabia for 4 days, and he has secret talks with the Saudi authorities that how we have to move forward with the Palestinian peace process, and that is that they believe that we need to make the Palestinians agree. Although the Palestinian Liberation Authority does not accept that we will agree to these American-Saudi proposals.
They've announced a third intifada.
But I think that intifada is nowhere. We just can't see it. You know, I was just looking at, before this decision was to come, the entire American diplomatic community was so conscious and asking everyone what will be the reaction from the Muslim world. And would you believe the Muslim world had to take the plea of Friday to protest. The decision was taken on Wednesday, and they didn't come on roads on Thursday. They had to take the plea of Friday, congregations and sermons, because they know it is much better to leave from a mosque filled with people who are there for offering prayer, Jummah prayer. So I think the issue has lost its value, in my understanding. I may be wrong.
That's a very good point that you've raised, sir. I would like to bring it to Ambassador Saab. Sir, if you look at the issue of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we've also heard about the two-state solution that has been promoted a lot in the recent years, but over the past 70 years, we have not seen any progress being made towards the two-state solution. In your opinion, sir, and if you also ask some leading important figures within Palestine, it was never the Palestinians' wish to have a two-state solution. They always wanted a singular state and maybe have a more democratic participation in the entire process of being a citizen of Palestine, which has now become Israel. So how do you explain this entire issue? Because if you look at the illegal settlements that the Israelis have been doing, and nobody's been able to stop them until now, all we hear is a lot of lip service with no practical aspect to any solution, sir.
To me, Israel has been following basically the dictum of might is right. And the world has been opposing it. It's very difficult for other countries, including the Islamic countries, Arab countries, to go and start a military war against Israel. But I think morally, politically, Israel has very little support in the world. What it has is force. And what it has in its side is the biggest power on earth. So it's two mights, the smaller might and the bigger might, coming together to crush a genuine, the genuine rights of the Palestinian people. And they have made promises, but they have gone back on them. However, I don't think that this policy of might is right. It justifies in any way what the Israelis or the Americans are trying to do. You said one-state solution. Israelis will probably not accept that because they are fearful that in another 50 or 100 years, the Arabs will be in a majority within its own borders. So it's not that simple either. What is needed is that Israel should fulfill its obligations, and so should the United States. America has been wrong before. From 1948 or 49 till 1972, they blocked the People's Republic's entry to the United Nations. Every year, they used to arm twist and get a vote enough votes to block the Chinese People's Republic's entry in the United Nations, and it took long. And they were doing all the wrong things on that one single issue, very important issue, till finally it dawned on them that time has come to accept this reality. So they should accept this reality also. Palestinian cause is a reality, and it doesn't help to be so one-sided as they have been. I don't think whether we can go and attack Israel is another matter, but I don't think we can give up the moral and principled position to resolve this issue.
Well, if you look at what Mr. Netanyahu has been saying recently, he said that Mr. Trump's administration accepting Jerusalem as Israel's capital is a way towards achieving peace. Now, I don't understand what exactly Mr. Netanyahu had in mind when he said that. If you could shed some light on what you think his process of thinking was there.
Well, I think there's nothing that the world is moving or the Middle East is moving towards a peace process. All what was that they were, the jugglery of words they're using. Look, we are going towards peace because this is the time the President Trump gave a statement. After that, the Secretary General, UN Secretary General gave a statement. The third international statement came from Prime Minister Netanyahu. I was watching that at that time. And no one was speaking at that time, and the Israeli commentators who were on the international media, they were saying that thank you very much, President Trump, you accepted the eternal capital of Israel, which is not the capital just today. This is about 2,000, 3,000 years old capital. This is where we are thankful to you. So I think what Netanyahu was talking about, that there has been some sort of adjustment which they made with the Israelis, and I think let me tell you, I do not underestimate the role of the president's son-in-law, who's a Jew. And I remember I have read in the reports that there was a time when Netanyahu came and met with Jared Kushner back at his young age, and they had links with the Palestinians, and they have been coming there, and they believe that. And let me tell you one thing important, that somehow the President Trump believes that we can enter into the resolution of the peace to this conflict if the Muslim world or the Arab world or the Palestinians agree with this support, with this idea that Jerusalem is the capital of the Israel, and we can go towards having a two-state solution if the Palestinians agree, which I think they won't agree. Definitely, that's not the issue. So I think he was just playing with the words, and there's nothing concrete, and everybody just has rejected what Netanyahu was saying, and even he's traveling to Europe these days. He has met with the French president, and nobody has given him any kind of support. Neither the European Union, the British authorities, or no one has given. So, but I think they have the American support, and American support was, crucial in this factor. All what has happened is that they have made America isolated, and they have, exposed Israel more in this conflict. But let me tell you, making such kind of statement has actually helped the Israelis to assert themselves. Although they have violated the 1980s, I think the UN Security Council Resolution 480.
Oslo Accord.
Yeah, the Oslo Accord as well, but the UN Security Council Resolution 480 of 1980 that the Jerusalem cannot be capital of Israel. So I think the entire debate is that to have the support of the United States, and even the Nikki Haley gave a statement in the UN Security Council that the Security Council has harmed or has harmed the peace process, in fact. And I think, there's no point in it that how the Security Council has harmed the peace process and how the Security Councils has deteriorated the relations between Israel and Palestine. That was a very, very vague statement with no reference, and they were just talking and giving statements that how the Security Council is harming the issue. So I think there was nothing. All that was said, they got the moral support. And as you were talking before the discussion, before the show started, that how the Israeli Prime Minister is engaged in his own problems at home, and his wife is engaged in the corruption issues are there. So I think that is one of the ways they are diverting attention.
It's basically
having
a smoke screen to deal with their domestic political issues. And that is just, somehow trying to divert the attention of the world and giving them something else to fight about, and basically just to
So this is one more thing. This is one more thing that they have created, a more wedge. So one more wedge, more space, and more political support at home. And look, this is how we are expanding and enhancing the Israeli cause. And this is how we have got the American support since Bill Clinton. They were working on it and they couldn't land. Look how we have done. So I think Netanyahu has got more domestic support. President Trump has got more isolated, and and the Congress has lambasted even. The Senate has lambasted.
I want to ask Ambassador Saeed Khalid Saab about how important is it, or what difference does it make whether the US accepts or recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital? What if the rest of the Islamic world, as the countries that are gathered in Turkey right now, also decide to declare Jerusalem or accept Jerusalem as the legitimate capital of Palestine? Then how does that work out? There are a number of countries that have accepted Palestine and a number of them that haven't. So
yes,
isn't this actually be going to the United Nations, and that's where the real forum is for it to be discussed?
I feel that although President Trump claimed that this is going to help in any way settlement of the dispute, but in fact he has dropped an important lever in the negotiations with Israel, which was that the final status of Jerusalem would be determined through talks of an overall settlement. So this is very strange. It's very odd that he should drop this kind of element from the negotiation, which is essentially, which is an essential part of the negotiation. Your second point, how will it change, or how will it affect the international community? We have seen the reaction of the international community. Israel hasn't got more support than before, but less support than before. America is always with Israel, so it has gone one step further in that support. De facto, this is another show of force, show of might. Might is right. Legally speaking, it doesn't resolve the issue.
So it really doesn't have no legal merits whether the US accepts Jerusalem as the capital, because if you look at it in practical terms, sir, the Israeli police already controls the territory of Jerusalem. Right. So what are we really talking about over here?
I'm not an expert in these technicalities, but I don't think it really changes the legal
status
problem. It answers the legal question. All embassies are so far in Tel Aviv.
Absolutely.
And if one country, because of its might, it decides to shift its embassy, which again may take a couple of years to do that actually.
Maybe Mr. Trump is not even in power.
He may not be in power, and that does not bind any other country about shifting their embassy.
And if Mr. Trump were to be impeached, or if he were to not win the elections next time, the new US president may come and reverse Mr. Trump's decision.
Another example I wanted to give is that America has been wrong is in its dealing with Cuba. Its neighbor.
Right.
For 50 years, they refused to deal with that country.
Yes.
Now they are dealing. So America can be wrong. America has been proved wrong before.
That's what history tells us. Well, let's move on, sir, and let's talk about the Islamic world and what they can do in order to simmer the tensions that are brewing in the Middle East, because we keep hearing about this decision being like a bomb thrown into the Middle East conflict. And right now also, if we see the Middle East is up in flames. If you look at Yemen, if you look at Syria, if you look at Libya, you look at Iraq, the whole place is really a mess right now. So considering all these other factors, how is this going to help in trying to achieve peace in the Middle East?
For me, as far as the Muslim world is concerned, I think everyone is the President Trump, before taking this decision, he called the Arab leaders. In fact, the 4 Arab leaders he called, said that, look, I am going to do it, and all they had is that, okay, fine, and they had no answer to it. That if you're doing it, why you are doing it, and we won't let you do it, or we can stop you, or we will. I think the way the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia needs legitimacy, and the way he's working, and the way Arab world is with the United States, and where the Qatar is facing crisis, and Egypt is already on aid, even coming from Saudi Arabia and or from the United States. So I think there is no country in the Arab world that can challenge its position and that can say that, look, we are not against it. And even if the Turkish president is speaking high of Palestine, on the same day there were business deals between the Israeli and the Turkish business community, and I think nothing is going to change for the Palestinian, and the Palestinians understand that their own diplomatic arm has not been very effective, and they have not been effective, other than just, look, this is how the cause is important. And I think even in Pakistan's case, I personally believe, I'm monitoring and looking thing, the Pakistan has not taken this case on very high. The reason behind is that, let me give you a small story from history. When Yasser Arafat came in, when President Musharraf was the head here, and he was General Musharraf, and there was a tussle between, there was a sort of harsh words traded between General Musharraf and Yasser Arafat, because when the press conference came, General Musharraf wanted that Yasser Arafat to name the Kashmir problem, so that the way we are dealing with the Palestinian problem and talking around the world that the Palestinian crisis must be resolved, in the same fashion the Palestinians need to talk about the Kashmir problem. And the Yasser Arafat refused to talk about the Kashmir crisis in a press conference, and Musharraf actually got angry with the Yasser Arafat. And I think from the last 10-12 years, it doesn't mean that Pakistan does not support the Palestinian problem. We support it. Everyone supports the Palestinian right of independence. But Pakistan even stopped supporting because they were not getting support from although the visits have been coming. Mahmoud Abbas has visited in every government in Pakistan, but we actually stopped supporting it. And the Arab world, in the same fashion, they support the Palestinian problem, and they do not support the Kashmir problem in the same fashion. So they have categorized that how we have to talk on that. And the Arab League has been silent. There are just sessions and sessions going on. They could not even resolve their own problems. So this is all exercises going on to show to their own public and to their own masses, look what we are doing. Otherwise, everyone knows that they don't have the capability to even transform a single thing.
Let's have one last question, because we're almost out of time for this topic. Can the Palestinians now approach the International Criminal Court? And moreover, what about most of the countries recognizing Palestine as a full member of the United Nations? Aren't these also more important steps that need to be taken before we can even talk about Jerusalem?
Well, I'm not privy to anything going on at the official level, but this thing could have repercussions in the coming months and even years. How the rest of the world, how the Islamic world, how they are going to react to this in a systematic way. The EU has already shown its reaction. At the level of 27 countries, they have showed a reaction, and here more than 50 countries have showed a reaction. So this shows that morally, where does the United States stand? Now, can it solve problems just by because it's the most powerful? It cannot. Problems will not be solved. Problems are getting more complicated.
Right, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for taking out the time and being on the show, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll talk about the state of the global economy and how it's going to be affecting Pakistan, especially when we talk about CPEC. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back, and now we continuing our discussion on the global economy with special reference to Pakistan. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me, we have Shoaib Sultan Khan Saab. He's the chairman of the board of directors for the Rural Support Program Network. And along with him, we have Muzaffar Ud Din Saab. He's the general manager of the Aga Khan Rural Support Program. Thank you very much, sir, for being here.
My pleasure.
Sir, let's start with Pakistan's focus on economic development, especially when we look at it in the perspective of CPEC. We have industrial development as one of our concerns. We have job creation, and we have special economic zones and urban development. How far do you think we've traveled on this road to development, and how much further do you think we still need to go?
Well, let me give you a worm's eye view, not the bird's eye view which you are asking me to give. Because if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN wants every country to implement, the first goal is poverty reduction. Now, how are you going to reduce poverty?
Well, one way is to eliminate all the poor people by killing them off, isn't it?
No, you don't have to.
I'm just being facetious here, sir.
Well, for the last, the 65th year of my working life, 45 years I have worked with the poor in Pakistan and South Asia. And let me tell you that, as Michelangelo used to say, when his David used to be praised, that I have done nothing. David was in the marble. I simply removed the superfluous material. And my experience has been that every person, man or woman, rural poor, they have tremendous potential to come out of poverty. The basic issue is, how should they be supported? That the obstacles which are keeping them poor, those obstacles are removed.
Well, one case in point is the Sugar Mills Association that's dealing with the poor, and the way you've seen them protesting all over the streets just to have a right support price for their hard work. Let's go on, sir.
No, you see, if you look at Pakistan, there are 18 million rural population households, of which, there are different figures, but the figures that I see when I go to the areas, like 12 years I worked in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, and now I'm working in almost all the provinces, the rural support programs. Almost about 48% need support, and on top of that another 20% are vulnerable. Now the main thing is that unless we reach and we go to the household of each poor, how are you going to improve there? And that is where the main thing is, that if you look at the state, there are two pillars of a state. One is the political pillar, there is the National Assembly, provincial assemblies, district councils, and union councils. People say, well, if there is local government, it will solve this problem. They cannot reach each and every household.
Right.
There is the administrative pillar, the president right down to Patwari.
Right.
Can they reach each and every household? And I learned from someone. There was a visionary whom I met when I was working at that time in then East Pakistan in 1959, Dr. Hamid Khan. And he also said, there's nothing original which he was telling me. He also learned it from the experience of the world, that how poverty, many countries were poor, they are not poor today. But he said that they all introduced a third pillar, which he used to call the socio-economic pillar. And the socio-economic pillar is exactly what Lincoln, when you look at his definition of democracy, it is by the people, for the people, of the people. Now, by the people are the elected members. For the people is the administrative pillar. Where is of the people? That is what rural support programs do. For example, in 12 years that I was in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, I mobilized 1 million people. Everybody said, well,
Well, if you look at Chitral and you're talking about Gilgit-Baltistan, sir, the Aga Khan has put a lot of effort in uplifting the people there. And if you look at the just the education literacy rate there, it's much higher than other parts of Pakistan. So, of course, a lot of credit goes to the Aga Khan for putting in that effort.
I was also
A part of that.
I was also invited by him to initiate what he called the Aga Khan Rural Support Program, December 19. And my first meeting with His Highness, I said to His Highness, I said, Your Highness, I'm not Ismaili. Why do you want me? He said, look, I've got a lot of programs in the social sector, health, education. But unless and until economically people and everyone, he said, you know, you can't have islands of wealth prospering. In geopolitical sense, he said, it is very sensitive area.
So how do you think, sir, let me bring this question to Muzaffar Ud Din Saab. How do you think that the formula or the model that the Aga Khan has developed in Gilgit-Baltistan, can it move further on and can it be used in other parts of the country? And if so, then why is that not being done, sir?
I think it's a very important question. Thank you very much. The first thing is the Aga Khan Rural Support Program, which Shoaib Sultan Khan was, the pioneer, the founder who started it. This has been already kind of replicated in the rest of Pakistan as a rural support program, like National Rural Support Program, and all the provinces have replicated as Sarhad Rural Support Program or Sindh Rural Support Organization.
But we haven't seen the same results.
Yes. And I'm just coming to that.
Okay, sir.
And the second part is this program has been, it was so successful because as Shoaib Sahab was telling us, it is by the people, has been replicated by the AKDN, Aga Khan Development Network, to 10 more countries in Africa, South Asia, in Central Asia. What has been the critical thing there, which I think is AKRSP has helped people. The most important thing was to create social capital. These people were organized into a community organization they call Women Organization for Women and Village Organization for Male. Now these organizations, almost at one time, almost more than 70% of households in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral are organized. When this critical mass is organized, then you can see a real development because it manifests into, like, these people can now think they feel more empowered, they feel
A sense of ownership.
Sense of ownership.
That's very important.
And though it took 30 years, now these organizations are more institutionalized. For example, I will give you three of very interesting examples. The first one is these village and women organizations, which are grassroots organizations. They have institutionalized to some important practices like participatory planning. Secondly, they have nowadays a very good transparency. They make decisions, implement projects very transparently. Thirdly, these organizations have now clustered into formal, they call it at Union Council level, local support organization. So these formal organizations are now very closely linked with government, supplementing or getting a government, which Shoaib was referring to, to household level, the government
Support.
Services and supports. The second most important thing, which I think in northern Pakistan, which in AKRSP we are working, is this women organization. When these women were organized, they got a platform where they can think, they can plan, and also they can take some very important initiatives together. So I think the empowerment comes not individually, it is through this collective effort. So I and Shoaib Sahab was, I think, few weeks before in Gilgit-Baltistan, and what we have there saw, these people have saved almost more than 2 billion rupees. So when people have capital, that is the fourth important thing. When a woman has or a poor people have access to capital or own capital, because they were doing these, Shoaib Sahab introduced this savings, 1 rupees, 2 rupees saving. So people have now saving. Women have money. So what they did very rightly, invested in very important areas. For example, one very interesting thing happened, which you referred, is women's education. These women organizations invested their savings into education. So that's why in Gilgit-Baltistan, particularly in Baltistan region, highest level of enrollment. Some area has very high literacy rate, even like Hunza. So these are some of very important things happen. Apart from that, you know, these women also got empowered, so they can take some new initiatives, some, you know, touching the glass ceilings. For instance, Samina Beg, she climbed Mount Everest.
Right.
Because she got these support that she can do it. Or you will be surprised if you come in northern areas, women have formed a construction company.
Fantastic.
100 young women are working together and doing all the value chain. So they are you know, working in non-traditional areas. So this is, I think, a very important lesson which we learned from this.
Well, we
Some
need
of the
to
questions that
spread
you
those,
asked, the question
or spread
you
those lessons across the board,
No,
and
no,
across
no,
the country, sir. That's the real
I'm
key.
going to answer that, why it has not happened all over.
Thank you, sir.
Basically, you know, this is a holistic approach. It's like an architect's design. And in the rest of Pakistan, although we got a replication called the Rural Support Program, but you know, basically this is something which cannot be done by an NGO or by sort of government by itself. It needed an organization which has the flexibility of an NGO and resources of government. When it came to the resources of government, they accepted the concept, they did it. But like an architect's plan which I presented them, they said, oh, we like the dome. We'll only build the dome. You know, in AKRSP, it was the entire thing. Cyrus himself used to come and see what it is done and support it. Wherever it has been done, now, for example, you'll be happy to know that since 2009, there are a couple of districts where we got the same resources we got in AKRSP in Sindh. And in those two districts, in 2015, European Union went there, their delegation, and they were so impressed, they said, no, we would like to do it.
So you could actually, you saw that those results were replicated in those two districts that you were talking about.
Now there are 18 districts where,
Okay.
but it is for the next 6 years, you know.
So how can we make sure that the pace of development can be improved, sir? Because if we're talking about in terms of decades and decades.
Give the resources, that's all. Whatever. How did, in India, I mean, where UN took me in 1994, and that they said, okay, well, with the achievements of AKRSP are so great, why don't you take the lessons to South Asia? And I was very skeptical that how will I sell it to India? And you know, they accepted it, the government. In Andhra Pradesh, within 10 years, 11 million rural women got mobilized. But government then provided all the resources which His Highness has provided me in AKRSP. In fact, they launched now, according to the World Bank, National Rural Livelihoods Mission in India, which is the largest rural development program in the world. And they say that they have learned it from Pakistan rural support programs.
But sir, unfortunately...
So you have to ask the Prime Minister, you have asked the government, don't ask us why it is not
Sir,
happening.
you're the one, you're the expert, sir. So unfortunately,
I'm the expert, I'm telling you the
you have to
reason.
answer these questions, sir. But we've also seen a rather large disconnect between income inequality and governance and corruption. Now, these are also issues that are plaguing our society as a whole. So how do we deal with all these
You see, we have 7
factors?
million rural people organized under RSPs. And we have about, I think, 12,000 professionals who are really working in RSPs. But what Muzaffar referred to, the social capital, to run these 400,000 community organizations, we have 1 million villagers who have been trained, who are the social capital.
So human capital is a very important thing. So investment in human beings is what we are lacking here.
No, human capital is one thing, but social capital is really that one person, one woman, 2 persons in the organization who take the organization forward.
So good leadership, you're saying, is the key over here.
Well, you know, without leadership, it won't.
Absolutely, sir.
I
No,
mean, you
no
look
doubt
at
about
Pakistan.
that.
Look at Pakistan. If we have a good leader, where would you be?
That's a $1 million question, sir. I'd like to ask one last question from Muzaffar Ud Din Saab. When we talk about regional economic development, and sir was also mentioning the work that he did in India, which was also very good. Where do we see CPEC? Where do we see ECO? Where do we see SAARC, ASEAN? All these organizations. How integrated are they really towards the upliftment of the entire area? Because what we see more is warmongering and pulling each other down rather than supporting each other to have overall prosperity. Again, income inequality is a huge issue in our present day. It's all over the world, sir. So is there any way or any thought about solving that aspect?
I think because as Shoaib was referring to this worm view, I will, because CPEC, let's take example of CPEC. CPEC is coming, through northern Pakistan or Gilgit-Baltistan.
Absolutely.
And I was just recently in a conference in EC mode where all these countries get together, SAARC countries, mountain countries, and we talked about also CPEC was there. And one of the most important things is, which we learned from AKRSP experience, is this mega investments or mega projects or mega works. For instance, in Gilgit-Baltistan case, when the Karakoram highway was constructed, it was of course a strategic road. But people from Gilgit-Baltistan, those areas where AKRSP organized them, took maximum benefit from Karakoram highway than those areas where they were not organized. So what we think that, this CPAC is coming, and I personally believe it, that people, those who are organized, those who have a plan, and I think this happens with these community organizations because they do a collective thinking, which is $1 million thinking,
right,
because many people get together. So I believe that people will get maximum benefit of these mega projects. Rather, if mega projects goes there, we always tell in northern Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan, that we see Indus rise and fall, we can't get benefit of that.
Right.
Similar will happen to the CPAC, if we can see trucks going and coming. But I believe that if people are, they are organized like we have in Gilgit-Baltistan, educated, and one very important area which is part of this RSP movement, we call the human capital, which you referred.
Right.
This investment has been done initially, and now we need to
Expand
invest
on
more,
that. Yeah, absolutely.
relevant to these all opportunities. I think we can maximum benefit from these mega investment, and I think these all investments are for people's benefit, but it is how we organize ourselves to get that.
I have one request to make to you.
Please, sir.
You are a very unusual anchor. I'm really impressed by your enthusiasm.
Thank you very much.
Come, get out of this, come to Sindh. I'll arrange for you and see. We have organized almost, nearly we are with the European Union and government of Sindh, because they're the ones who are supporting us. I mean, you will be surprised, the government of Sindh is really in the forefront, and EU, of course, and you'll see what these women are doing.
Well, sir, more power to them. I'm a great supporter.
Well,
and
you should come and
even
see.
Though, even though people don't think that it's the right thing to
do
say.
a program on them.
Absolutely, sir.
take it.
You know what Hitler said, that if you want a great nation, give me great mothers, will make a great nation. And that is so true, even though it was coming from him. But thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time,
Thank
because
you very
we're
much.
completely out of time. Thank you so much
Thank you
for
very
being here and sharing your views with PTV World.
Very, very good.
Well, you heard the conversation, and in conclusion, we'd like to say that the only way forward is for each one to play their part in making Pakistan a success, and we should all do that, and I pray and I hope that that happens sooner rather than later. And on that note, it's goodbye.